Hey, Design Dominators. I'm so excited to share this with you. We've got Michael Bruny-Groth here, and he's going to go over Logo Package Express and the new features that are coming out. And I'm super excited about this because I love this Illustrator extension, and because this is the worst part of the logo design process for me. And I know it is for some of you. So I'm so excited that he's here to share with us all these new features.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. There's a new version of the extension coming out on Monday, which is August 3rd. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of new features that are available. And I'm going to, just for people who aren't familiar, I'm going to show how the tool works, but then I'm happy to show you these new features that you haven't seen before and see what you think about them.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen now. And we'll take a look. All right, cool. So Logo Package Express is an extension for Adobe Illustrator. You need to have, you need to be on the Creative Cloud and have like CC 2018 or newer. But if you're running the most recent version of Illustrator, you'll be totally fine. And basically, what you can do with Logo Package Express is export and generate and name and sort all of the logo files that you need for your client. And this process can take, 45 minutes to an hour, as you know.
So much longer. What if you screw up and have to go back and redo it? Because I've done that many times.
Yeah. And well, yeah. And if you're going to be the professional who goes in and, spell checks all the files and stuff like that, then you can definitely spend a ton of time on this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you're familiar with how it works, but I think I'm just going to do a quick run through. Basically, you open up your final logo artwork and you have the extension. The extension, once you install it, you go to Window, Extensions, and then you can grab it from there. And it opens up and you make a selection of your artwork and you press Set Logo. And this is going to create a new file. It's going to make a duplicate of the logo artwork that you selected. It'll be the same color swatches, the same size, and the same document color mode. And then what you can do is you can either export the logo as it is, or you can break it apart into its different components so that you can give your client those components in isolation. For this example, maybe the leaf icon here is something that goes on an app, and maybe they put just the logo type on their invoices or something like that.
Now, Michael, do you always have to start with CMYK? I mean, sometimes I start with Pantone.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the new features. So you are predicting the future, and I'll actually show you that in a little bit here. But let's say you started with CMYK, or if you started with RGB, that it's going to import that artwork as RGB as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do Pantone, I will reveal what happens with Pantone in a little bit. So you can separate these components, and over in the logo builder screen on Logo Package Express, you can just start to set these components. And that's going to allow us to isolate them. And what we can do now is we click Make Print Logos because, I'm working in CMYK. But if this were RGB, I'd make the web logos first.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it's just going to zoom through and create a whole bunch of logo variations automatically. You don't have to do any work. So you're going to get a full color suite of logos. You're going to get all black, all white, grayscale, and then inverted is a color scheme where some of the parts of the logo are in color and the rest of it is turned to white. And also, Logo Package Express does automatic Pantone conversion. So if you haven't selected your Pantone colors yet, you can't afford, one of those fancy swatch books or whatever, we will do an automatic conversion for you.
And it does it very well, because that was a big thing that I wanted to check it for, because as I talk about this quite a bit in the podcast, is that there are some colors like certain yellows and certain blues. Certain yellows will turn orange on uncoated stock, and same with some blues turning purple, but there's a conversion thing too with the CMYK. It also shifts in color somewhat. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly if you have your own Pantone swatches, there's ways to deal with that. But this is our match right here. So you can see, these were the CMYK colors, and our conversion is very, very close.
Yeah.
So, you can rely on Logo Package Express to make a good conversion for you if you haven't selected Pantones and you want them. But once you have generated all these versions, you can decide what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. And for me, I don't need this tagline by itself. So if you delete them, they won't get exported. And I also have some kind of redundant logos here, like this lockup is the same color as this down here, and these inverted marks are the same color as the symbols. So I'm just going to delete those as well.
Because that black is actually not the background; it's just the color of the pasteboard. Yeah,
the artboard is colored black so that you can see the white artwork over top of it, but the file won't export the black. That's correct. So now we can go ahead and just export. It took a second to generate all these versions. It took a second to clear out the ones we don't want. So let's export, and we can look for a folder. I've got this Leaf logo package, and you give it a name. I'm going to turn caps lock off, and then I'm going to call it Leaf. A lot of people do like a prefix, that's sort of an acronym for the client, but I'm calling this Leaf. And then when I hit create logo package, it's going to start exporting all of these files, and it's going to put them into folders and sort everything into subfolders. It's going to name everything exactly what we want it to be named. And it's doing it all automatically for you without you having to do that manual export. So if I start opening these up, you can see there's a folder structure, things are being exported in. And this process can vary in the time it takes depending on how many file formats you choose, which is something that I'll show you in the settings. But essentially, it's just a matter of setting your logo, setting those components, generating the logos, and then exporting. It's a few clicks, and you get all of these logo files. And in a second here, I'm going to do the web files so that you have this complete suite of files. Some are for printing and some are for the web, and it's going to cover all your bases.
I love that in the beginning, you don't have to do every single one of those options. Like you could just pick and choose, and then with the file naming, I mean, I'm very OCD about organization and naming things correctly. So I really appreciate that it says like print and then CMYK, because that's not only good for a designer to see, quickly, but also it's clear for clients, if that's a CMYK or that's a Pantone or whatever.
Exactly. So the folder structure, it should make it really easy for clients to kind of drill down and figure out why, or like what this logo is for. It's a gray logo, it's used for print, and it's in the CMYK color mode or, whatever. So, okay, after the print logos are all exported, then you just come and click make web logos. And this suite of files is not going to include the Pantone files because you don't need Pantone for the web. Those are primarily for printing. So now when I press export, everything is set up the way I wanted it, and I will press export. And now, in addition to a print folder inside of all of these different main folders, we're going to have a digital folder that pops up as well. So you can see we have digital here, and we're getting JPEGs and PNGs. These are the settings I chose for the demonstration, but you can get Illustrator files, you can get SVGs, JPEGs, PNGs, all of those different things.
I love the structure of the folders. It's so helpful.
Yeah. Hopefully it makes it easier for clients to really understand what the files are supposed to be for. So now that this is done, that's your logo package. I mean, that's everything you've gone through. You've exported the print, you've exported the web, and you've got all these files. So your client is definitely not going to need to come back to you with one-off requests because you've covered your bases.
Right. That drives me nuts. That's why I like to have clearly named folders that say exactly what it is. It makes it very clear for not just the designer, but for the client. Yeah. And because I don't want to be their like secretary and sending them logos, on request. I want them to get everything, and then they can, they can help themselves.
Yeah. So that's the process. You just set the logo, you separate out the components, generate it, generate the different variations and export, and you can get this done in about 2 or 3 minutes. And that's the general gist of what happens with Logo Package Express. But now I want to talk to you about the new features, because that was like the basic level. Now we're getting into some new cool stuff. So the first big major feature that's coming to Logo Package Express version 2 is naming, file and folder naming customization. Okay. So we saw this big suite of logos, and they're all nicely named, but not everybody refers to the grayscale logos as grayscale. Maybe they call them black and white, and maybe people don't want to call this a digital folder. Maybe they want to call it a web folder. So there's that element of, I just refer to things differently as a designer than maybe another designer does. But the other element of it is that there's people all over the world that are using this to make their logo packages. So wouldn't it be nice if they could export things in their own language too, or at least the language that their client speaks? So under the naming tab in the settings, this is a new feature. You can change just your standard convention. Do you like to have dashes versus underscores, that sort of stuff? But then you can also rename basically every component, every piece of the logo naming convention and the folder convention.
Nice.
And what's really cool is when you make those changes, you get to see a live preview of it out on the pasteboard. So if I call like a logo an emblem or something, and I tab out, you'll see that logo is updated to emblem on the pasteboard. And if I want to call grayscale something like BW for black and white, that's good to go. And you can even change, the color gamuts as well. Maybe you don't like to call, maybe you do PMS for short, right? So PMSC and PMSU, and you can totally customize the entire file and folder naming structure to meet your needs, to be something that's going to be easy for your clients to understand.
I love that.
Yes. So I just want to make sure nobody's dinging me over here. Okay, cool. Yeah. So big feature number 1, file naming customization. Feature number 2 that's coming to Logo Package Express 2.0 is the ability to export your logos at many different scales. So the original version of Logo Package Express, you could define a width for your JPEGs and your PNGs, but you can only do it once. So if you needed a 600 pixel wide and a 900 pixel wide, you'd have to run the extension more than once. Well, now we can add multiple scales. And this is just like, a lot of people might be familiar with this panel in Illustrator called Export for Screens, where you can add scales. That's a good feature from Illustrator, but it doesn't, name your files. It doesn't sort them. It doesn't put them into folders. And also, one other thing that it doesn't do is it allows you to set a width or a resolution, but it doesn't allow you to set both a width and a resolution. So with Logo Package Express, you can choose a width, so I want 600 pixels and I want it at 144 PPI, and I want 1200 pixels and I want it at 300 PPI. You can change your dimension and your resolution. And also new to Logo Package Express 2.0 is we've added the option for print JPEGs. So JPEG is a format that you can use for printing. It can hold CMYK document information. It can be a high resolution file. So all of the JPEGs that you export, if you choose to do so from Logo Package Express, will be high resolution and print ready. But because of that, you can also set scales for print.
And I like the scales for print. That's cool, because a lot of times, like if I'm making, I want to make TIFFs, I usually go with about, if it's a more horizontal or square logo, I might be okay, around 5 inches wide, because that's like half a page. Yeah. So how big is the client going to need to use a TIFF? It shouldn't be, that should be sufficient for a raster image. So that's a great way to use the print scales right there.
Right. And you can set any unit you want, if you're working in picas or inches or whatever. So if you said 5 inches, now we've got a 5-inch print scale. And so you can add as many as you want. So multi-scale export is coming to Logo Package Express version 2. The next feature, this is a really, really highly requested feature, is the ability to add padding to your logos. So a lot of people, when they give the logos to their clients, they define clear space, amount of the space around the logo that they shouldn't get this close to the logo. I call it a barrier against ugliness. And they like to give that clear space in the files to their clients so that when they're setting up a Word document or something, they don't accidentally break the clear space rules.
That's a good idea.
But there's a lot of other ways to use this. It could just be padding on a file that you need for the web. But all you have to do is come over to the padding tab. You can set whatever unit you want and just put in some information, and boom, you can see that padding gets automatically applied in the pasteboard, get a lifetime preview. And if you don't want the padding to be equal around all sides, you can just break the link icon here, and you can put in, something totally custom if you want to. You could even use this to sort of hack the artboards to make them square for social media avatar images if you wanted to.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So there's your padding. A lot of people work in like picas or something like that, say 1p6, whatever you want. And it will add that all the way. Sorry. The padding can either be locked. 16p, not what we're looking for. The padding can either be locked to all sides or, change it based on your needs. So that's another major feature coming to Logo Package Express. The next feature, which I know, Colleen, you're really interested in, is Pantone-first workflow. So you may remember, and actually I'll make print logos again. You may remember that what we did is we started with a CMYK artwork.
Right. And
then we converted that CMYK to Pantone down here. And you can see the Pantone swatches in the swatch panel. And, this works well for a lot of people, but many people have a nice swatch book. They've already picked out a Pantone color, and they just want to get that into Logo Package Express. Well, with the first version, you could come to the color settings and you could turn it to manual so that you could manually recolor these before you exported instead of using our automatic conversion. But now what you can do is, I'm going to actually reset this and start a new one, is let's say that we had a logo that was already colored with Pantone. So I'm just going to quickly recolor this to Pantone. And now we have a logo that is using 360C for the green and 7677 for the purple. And if we had tried to set this in the old extension, it would have erased these swatches and automatically converted to whatever it thought was the best match. But you don't want that. You want to keep your Pantones. So now if I set the logo, it just automatically knows that Pantone swatches have been applied. It keeps those Pantone swatches. I'm going to turn the padding off. It keeps those swatches. And then when you make print logos, it automatically reapplies those swatches to the Pantone versions. So if we come down here, we'll see that this is that same 360 that we chose before, and this is the same 7677. Now, one thing it does do, for ease and this is how most people sort of work with Pantone, it recolors, like we set Pantone coded, right? So for the Pantone uncoded, it's just using those same numbers again. Now, this is a difference between the automatic conversion, which truly tries to find the best match. So you may have different colors between your coded and uncoded. But when you do the Pantone-first workflow, it's going to use the colors that you determined when you set the logo.
So if you start with CMYK, it's going to convert to the closest match for Pantone coded, but also different numbers for uncoded. But if you start with Pantone first, it's going to have the same numbers for coded and uncoded. Is that right?
Yes, because the assumption is if you've selected your Pantones already, then it's likely that those are the colors that you want. Whereas with the automatic conversion, you haven't selected them yet. So there's an opportunity to try and find the absolute best match.
Gotcha.
But I think people would maybe be confused if they only got the Pantones they picked for one and then not for the other. And in a lot of cases, they would just end up having to recolor those again and be kind of confused.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That was ultimately the decision, but you can preserve your Pantone swatches. So that's the Pantone-first workflow inside of Logo Package Express. And then I think the last major feature coming to the new version is we have presets. So let's say that you were bilingual and you had an English version and you had a Spanish version of the logo file naming convention. Well, then you could simply come up to the presets here and you could add a new preset. And then, maybe I'm just going to make some arbitrary changes here and call this an icon. Whoops. Come up and go ahead and click add new preset. Call it alternate, save. And now I have, multiple presets that I've set up with these different settings. You can see this is changing, emblem is back, and then I'll go to alternate. This is changed to icon. And once you have these presets set up, you can update the preset if you want to make a change to it. You can reset the current preset if you did make changes, but you don't like it. And you can also manage presets, which allows you to come in and delete one or as many of the presets as you want to.
So what you mentioned Spanish though?
Yeah, what I'm saying is someone would set that up, right? I do not speak fluent Spanish, so I don't know what Spanish.
I almost do.
Oh, well, cool. Yeah, I mean, like.
Don't ask me to translate on the fly, though.
For example, if I wanted to mess with the colors or whatever, then you would save out that preset yourself as a Spanish preset, but it doesn't come preloaded with the different languages. No. So the presets are available for the naming and for the scales. And for scales, it's really interesting because you may save scales for like Apple's app icon sizes, favicon sizes, social media avatar sizes, all those good things you could have different presets for. So I think those are the major new features: file naming, multi-scale export, padding, Pantone-first workflow, and the presets. There are a ton of little bug fixes and minor adjustments all over the place, but I won't bore you with those details. So
now with the web scales, so you've got the 900 pixels at 72 ppi, 600 at 144, and then 1200 at 300. Now, when you and I talked another time, you were talking about that width being something that you might want to adjust because you've got your if you want to do just the symbol by itself, the icon by itself, like that's a vertical one, so you don't want that to be as wide as like the entire logo altogether. So that's where that would come in handy, right, with the web scales. So the way that the web scales work, this is a good question. Let me set some different components to kind of demonstrate this. So if I set a logo mark here, for example, and I said make web logos, what is going to be happening is on these web scales, if you put in 900 pixels and you opened up this file and it was 100 pixels, you'd be confused. You'd be like, I set 900 pixels. And if you opened up this one and it was 900, but this one wasn't, there's a lot of room for confusion there. So the width that you set here is going to get applied to all of the artwork uniformly. Now, if you needed, for the icons like we were talking about, let's say that we were really actually trying to use Logo Package Express to
output some favicons or app icons or something like that, then, what I might want to do is I might want to come in here and put some padding around it to make it square. I'm just gonna eyeball this because I don't know what it would need to be exactly off the top of my head. But you might set it up like this, and then you just simply delete the variations that you don't want. So you don't actually want the full logo because you're only working with these icons. Then you would come to the scale tab and you could put in, your 64, these would all probably be 72, your 32, and your 16 pixels or whatever. And then you would just be able to export the icons and not worry about these sizes affecting the rest of the logos.
Well, that's easy enough. Okay, so if you leave it by default, it's going to give everything that width, that fixed width. So if you do have something that is narrower, then you might want to, maybe not, but that's where you could come in and change that. And like you said, just delete the ones on the left, the entire logos, and then set the custom width for those, skinnier elements. My experience has been that most people want to make a logo package for their client to just cover their bases. It's like an added bonus to be able to use it to export these really special use cases. But typically, if you just want your client to have a JPEG and a PNG that's going to be big enough to display on the web, you don't really care if the mark is a little bit bigger than it would need to be, or the logo type is a little bit. You don't really care because once you put it on the web is going to scale it down to whatever size you've determined in the code. So, and it's not like you're ever going to have like the whole full logo next to the icon by itself.
yeah. And then for design work, you're going to be typically working with vector files anyways. And the vector files, they don't follow these width settings. The vectors get export at whatever size the artwork that you brought in is. So yeah. So that's the overview. And do you have any other questions?
It's very exciting.
Yay. Yeah, I think people will really like these new features, especially the naming, because, even if it's just a matter of calling something, I call black logos one color, but a lot of people will want to call them black logos or have their own thing for it. And it's a lot of work. Okay, yeah, it's a lot of work to go back and rename those, especially when you're using a tool that's saying that it's going to make this process easier for you. So the naming is going to be huge for a lot of people.
Now, were a lot of these features, some of these features I know were requested, were all of them requests, or were things that, because I know you're always working on new things, even if someone's not, even if they're not requested, I know how hard you work on this. So I'm wondering how many of these were features that you had already had in mind, or how many were feature requests?
The file naming was definitely a feature request. The padding was definitely a feature request. People can request features in a way that isn't very direct as well. So if I get a ton of questions about the same thing, even if they're not saying, I wish you would do this, I can still see that there's something that could be fixed there. And so that was the case with the multiple scale exports. People would say like, oh, I need to export it at a few different sizes. And I'd have to say, well, you need to run the extension a couple of different times and change the name or whatever. And so it was just easy for me to see, oh, many people are running into this issue. The Pantone-first was a request, definitely from several people. The formats, adding the JPEG to print file formats, like I don't personally recommend that, but that doesn't mean that people's clients aren't requesting it anyway. So that was a request. Yeah, some other things that we didn't talk about were certainly requested, like the Illustrator files that we exported in the original version would just save each one of the artboards on the working file as a separate Illustrator file. And what that would do is it would take all of the swatches from the Illustrator file. So if you're saving a black logo, there's no reason to have all the different color swatches in there. So we've totally modified the way Illustrator files get exported so that they're really clean and they only have the relevant swatches. That's, something else that's new.
Oh, good. I'm OCD like that. So
yeah, yeah.
Select all unused swatches always.
That's right. And a lot of there's been a lot of UI changes too, which I didn't want to bore people with, but like highlighting the primary action button blue, making sure that all of those buttons are always at the bottom. Those are a lot of changes too that you can just see from observing the way people are running into issues. The presets was not something that was requested. I just think that that's useful if you have, you know, lots of different ways you like to set things up. So yeah, but primarily it's about listening and adding things that people are requesting.
That's great. Well, thank you for showing us around.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm excited to use it.
Yeah, it'll be available for everyone on August 3rd of 2020, which by the time this video is up will be today or will have been passed. So it'll be ready.
Right, and all they have to do is go to creative-boost.com/logo package, and they'll get it. Yeah,
you're going to get hooked up. Sounds great. Well, again, thank you for letting me share, and I hope the design dominators check it out and enjoy using it.
Yeah, and they can certainly post and ask you some questions that they might have as well.
Yeah, I like to hang out in the group, and I'm happy to answer any of those in-depth questions that might come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.